If you're already married or you're about to get hitched, you might need to have that important but difficult conversation about money. Here to guide you through what to say and what to ask is family law attorney Barry Finkel. Barry, it's been a few years since we've had a chance to hang out. It's good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you too. I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. This is always kind of a tricky conversation to have in a marriage, but maybe the most important conversation, right? The money conversation.
You know, Dave, the most important thing that a family can do and that parent and that people can do before they get married is to discuss what their financial expectations are during a marriage. Other than infidelities,
right?
Money is the single most important reason that people get divorced. And there are things that you can do to minimize that.
Yeah, and we have a whole list of points to get to. And I know the first one that you have even happens, so some of these conversations happen when you're married. But if you've waited till you're married, maybe you've waited too long, right? I mean, you got to talk about this stuff before you get married.
I think and that is really the most important thing, is that before you get married, have a frank discussion with your spouse-to-be. Understand what they have, what they owe, how much money they earn, what their expenses are. You don't want to go into a marriage blind about what a person has, and particularly about what they owe and what the expectations are during the marriage. And that's the next thing. And then once you have that discussion and you fully understand what they have, you have to talk about what the expectations are during the marriage. Who's going to be paying for what? Are you going to be commingling and combining your incomes? Who's going to be paying for the mortgage payment? Who's going to be paying for the pet expenses? How are you going to decorate the home? Who's going to contribute to what when you purchase a home? All of these things that you can get out of the way and have a clear understanding before you go in, there's less likely to cause problems once you're married.
So as far as I know, you're not a professional therapist, correct?
I'm a divorce lawyer.
Okay, right, we know that. But I was trying to be sort of tongue-in-cheek, because what I'm asking you is, yeah, let's have these conversations, but how do you get into it? How do you sit your partner down and say, we need to talk about the $300,000 in student loans that you have?
That's a great question. That's a very, very difficult thing to do. But marriage is a serious thing, and it's a serious commitment, and it requires serious discussions. And it's not just all fun and games. As you know, marriages have their ups and downs, and you need to foresee that going in and have those discussions, just like in prenuptial agreements. And that's one of the points that we're going to talk about. Is that a way to minimize problems later on is to have a clear understanding of what everybody's responsibilities are. People usually do that in a prenuptial agreement. People are happy, they're trying to plan for their wedding. It's supposed to be the happiest time of their lives, and now you have to sit somebody down and say, by the way, I think we need to sign a prenuptial agreement. Then you get lawyers involved, and then who knows what happens. So it really tests your commitment to one another, it really tests your love to one another, and if you can overcome that, then you have a good relationship. But this is one of those rough patches in the road that you have to get past. You have to have that serious discussion. There's no way around it.
So are you in favor of prenups?
I think in a lot of situations it's very important. Most people believe that in second marriages it's important. For example, you have children from a prior marriage, you want to provide for them. Marriage confers rights on a spouse that could affect your ability to leave money to your children. These things can be resolved in a prenuptial agreement, but what we're seeing more and more now are first-time marriages. People that may have expectancies like inheritances and trusts, and people that are scared by the word alimony. They want to make sure that they're not going to get exposed to that if they get divorced. So they want to resolve those issues early on in a case. We see it frequently, and a prenuptial agreement can be very detailed, or it can be very basic. But the beauty about a prenuptial agreement is that you can agree to virtually anything that the court will have to enforce. The only thing you really can't agree to are children-related issues. You can't agree to child support in advance. You can't agree to how parental responsibility and time sharing is going to be with the children. That's going to be based on what's in the best interest of the children at the time that you get divorced. But it is a very difficult discussion, but you have to have that discussion if it's something that you're serious about and you want to have a full commitment for this marriage.
Where does infidelity come into play on that? In other words, if you agree on stuff ahead of time and then somebody cheats on somebody, is it still honored?
Well, prenuptial agreements are enforceable. Prenuptial agreements can be attacked really one of two ways. One is by claiming that the other person has been under duress, or there's been some overreaching, or if there's fraud in the disclosures. You have to disclose all of your assets and liabilities, your income and expenses. Disclosure is the key to enforceability of a prenuptial agreement. Infidelities don't really have anything to do with it. Florida's a no-fault state, and the only reason that it's important in a divorce case, and the only way it would be relevant, is if you can show that there's some economic consequence. For example, the husband has a girlfriend and he's buying gifts, jewelry, taking trips with marital funds. Then, the only consequence is those marital funds now have to be brought back into the marital estate. The husband would owe the wife only half, because half of it was his. So he would owe her half of what he had spent on his girlfriend. What we're seeing now in prenuptial agreements, believe it or not, are things called infidelity clauses. And what these are is provisions that provide that if a person gets caught cheating, then maybe the payments they would make under the prenuptial agreement are doubled.
Wow. You talk about like unromantic notion.
Well, let's say that this is a second marriage. Okay. And let's say that the husband is marrying the wife who he had cheated on during his first marriage. Well, he has a track record.
Right. Okay. Right.
She knows going in, maybe this guy is not the most faithful person in the world. Maybe I need to protect myself against doing that. The most important thing about that is you have to define what is cheating. Is a kiss cheating? Is going to a strip club cheating?
Is Bill Clinton involved in the definition of cheating?
Very funny. He didn't have a prenuptial agreement. If he had, I think it would have turned out a little bit differently,
Right.
I think.
Do you find that usually women are the ones insisting on the infidelity clause for their spouses?
Most of the time, yes, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's what I would think. All right, so we hit on that. That's a big one. Couple of minutes left. What are some other big ones?
During the marriage, one of the big things that we see a lot is people being very secretive about their finances. And what may occur during the marriage is some catastrophic financial event. Maybe you lose a job, maybe you lose money investing. Now you have to pay the bills. So what do? You start borrowing on your credit cards. Your spouse doesn't know that you're borrowing on the credit cards because maybe you're embarrassed. Who knows, whatever reason. You're not being open and frank about the problems that you're having. Now you want to get divorced, and for the first time ever, the spouse is now seeing that there's $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 of credit card debt that they never saw.
Wow.
You have to be honest and open on a regular basis. And I've seen situations where people sit down on a monthly basis and they go through their finances, so they're clear as to what they have, what they owe, what they have coming in. Try not to be secretive. This is your spouse. You've agreed to stay together forever, and you have to be honest and open about everything that goes on in your marriage. Finances is no different. Also, be aware of what your expectations are and what your liability is for premarital debts. Like you mentioned before, student loans. Generally, student loans that were incurred prior to the marriage are not marital. But let's say you have a young couple that gets married. Husband, maybe he's in medical school or law school, and he's incurring tremendous student loans. We see them now, $150,000, $250,000. Just when he gets out of law school, they get divorced. And the wife, in this case, let's call it the wife, she's not going to be around to really realize the benefit of that education and the career momentum that this guy is going to be having from the years going forward. Problem is she's liable for that $250,000 of student debt.
Yeah.
That may be a reason why you may want to have a prenuptial agreement. Frequently, we're seeing postnuptial agreements. You can enter into an agreement after you get married if there's problems in the marriage and say, I don't like the way things are going. Maybe you're giving too much money to your parents. You're helping to support other people. I want to be clear on this, that if you're doing that, you're doing it with your money and not my money.
Right. Okay. Well, like you said, tough conversations, but conversations that have to be had. As we say goodbye, if people want to reach you and speak to you about it, how do they do that?
They can reach me. My telephone number is 954-776-1414, or they can see me on my website, bfinkelpa.com.
Good to see you again. Come back soon.
Thank you, Dave. Nice
Yep.
seeing you.
When we come back, how you can run to raise money for spinal cord research. We'll be right back.